A colonel pleaded not guilty in court today and waived his right to a speedy trial.
David Franklin Slater is accused of sharing classified information. Near the end of his tenure at Offutt in 2022, Slater allegedly provided national defense information over a dating app to someone that he believed was a woman in Ukraine. He was released on conditions today that allow him to only have one device that is able to connect to the internet, and that device will be subject to monitoring. If convicted, he faces up to a decade in prison.
New at 5, the Omaha